Dinner for shoes, please.
Hello and welcome to an episode of Dinner for Shoes. I am really excited. I'm always excited when I am wearing the designer's clothes who I spoke to as my special guest. And I had the pleasure of interviewing Kahindo Matene, who, if you watch Project Runway and you're a Project Runway devotee, you may know, was on season 12 of the show. She has rebranded, though, since the show, and we talk a little bit about that in the interview. But I think the reason why I'm most excited to talk to her, and if you can hear Nick shaving in the background in the bathroom, I am so sorry. That actually kind of just ruins the exact reason of this episode, because I want to celebrate designers who do things and make it part of their business to promote women's livelihoods, women's rights. And we're going to talk about some of those designers today, some of whom you probably know, but Kahindo is one of them. And we talk a lot about that. Her clothing is seriously made for women to appreciate and feel confident in. And I'm not just saying this because I'm wearing the clothes and because I had her on the podcast. I love the way this clothing is cut, the way this clothing makes me feel. I love that we're mixing black and blue and it's working so well. Actually, I think we should get into the outfit behind the shoes so I could talk a little bit more about the pieces and what I decided to wear with them. So let's get into that. And then I'll talk a little bit more about Kahindo. We'll talk about Kahindo's favorite meal. I'll try it. We'll talk about some of the other women who are founders, who are CEOs, entrepreneurs and designers, and they literally make it part of their business in such a standout way that they just want to continue to support women no matter what they're doing. Like, even if they weren't in fashion design, they would be supporting women. So we're going to talk about them. Now, let's get into the outfit behind the shoes. And hopefully the girls, they may not be interested in Kahindo's favorite meal. You'll see why, but hopefully the girls come in. I actually don't know if Kit will be in this episode because we have a huge Amazon box sitting behind the couch and she has like created a nest inside. And you know when cats do that and you just don't want to take it away from them. And so the Amazon box has been sitting there all week and I'm letting Kit nest in there. So the outfit behind the shoes. These two pieces are by Kahindo and they're on her website. As you'll find out from our interview, Kahindo's also stocked at many other retailers that you probably didn't even know she was stocked at. Bloomingdale's, Anthropologie, Shopbop. These are all retailers that you already shop at and you can get her bold prints and beautiful colors there. I actually really particularly like the way she talks about how she is inspired to design a new piece. This just struck me, so I'm just going to say it. One of the things that she told me is that once she has her prints, which are kind of just inspired by like where she goes all over the world, different cultures, different experiences, once she has her prints in mind and she like develops them, she will look into colors. And when she looks into colors as part of the process of designing, she actually decides to go with the colorways that aren't trending for the new season. And I really love that. I think she's probably not the only designer who does that, but it kind of makes for really cutting edge, striking pieces that people end up gravitating towards because everything else they see looks a certain way, right? So I love that. These pieces are amazing. I've got a little mini skirt on here and the prints obviously match, but we've got black and blue, which is why I knew I wanted to wear my Miu Miu shoes because they have these really beautiful blue and black rhinestones on the heel. Crystals. I'm going to call them crystals. Rhinestones feels a little cheap for what these are, but we'll get there. So what I wanted to say about the pieces that I'm wearing by Kahindo is that we don't talk about this often enough, but women want things to hit at the right place, right? And like, I think in my conversation with Kahindo, you will see that she acknowledges that she's creating for women, that she wants women to feel comfortable in her clothing. I am obsessed with the way this crop top hits. It bears just a sliver of my midriff when I turn a certain way. So there's movement there, but it's boxy, which is very trendy, very now, very cool. And then the skirt it's designed in such a way that it's asymmetrical and it hits me at exactly where I want every mini skirt to hit my legs. I personally don't have the best relationship with my legs, and I have athletic legs, and I like when a mini skirt hits me at just the right point. And this skirt does that from every angle. I am obsessed with the way that it looks on me. And I feel so good in this outfit. Like, I don't want to take it off. You know what I mean? So I think that is Kahindo's goal in creating her beautiful clothing. And you'll see a little bit more of it throughout our interview. But I decided to pair it with my Miu Miu platforms. These are vintage. I sourced them from, I believe, The Real Real. I actually wore them, and I think we featured them on the podcast once before in the very beginning, because I wore them to my best friend's wedding. And I kind of incorporated them in a get ready with me sort of reel. But I couldn't believe that I found these without one crystal missing. These are very well made. And what I want to say about Miu Prada, who was the designer behind Miu Miu. So if you didn't know this, Miu Miu is kind of like the other brand that Miu Prada has Prada, and she has Miu Miu. And I have always been obsessed with the difference between the two brands. I might have already talked about it in a different podcast. I don't even know at this point, but I saved this infographic on my phone that talks about the difference between Miu Miu and Prada, and how Miu Prada has said, she's an Italian designer, she said that when she thinks 3 times while she's designing Miu Miu, she stops. So Miu Miu is a lot more, it's instant, it's impulsive, and it is the brand that I gravitate towards more out of the two, even though I love Prada just as much. Now, Miu Prada has done so much for women, so she is one of these designers who I am proud to support. Miu Miu was the first bag brand that I ever invested in with my first paycheck, and I just love Miu Prada so much. And one of the things she does is Prada's women's tales, and I know that she does the same thing for Miu Miu, which is basically an event and kind of a campaign that she runs that supports women in the arts. So that is huge. And some of the other designers we're going to talk about later kind of do similar things. But beyond that, Miu Miu and Prada as brands challenge the gender norms of the way a woman is supposed to look and dress and feel. And every time I watch a runway show that is Miu Miu or Prada, I feel that way. I feel like I am being introduced to an unexpected way of dressing that I really love. A lot of the time in fashion, people will talk about how a designer just knows what a woman wants to wear. And I was just talking about that with Kahindo, right? Well, I feel that way about Prada and Miu Miu. So I really feel like Miu Prada lifts women up in more ways than one, literally, figuratively, and literally. And so I decided to wear these shoes today to go with my outfit. I also wore them with cute little frilly socks. I think these are by Princess Polly. I really don't know for sure. I got them such a long time ago, but they have cute little bows, and they kind of brought in the black when it comes to mixing the blue and the black, right? And then for my jewelry, I'm actually wearing jewelry that is very meaningful to me, so I could kind of talk about my new tattoo right here, just because it is Women's History Month. And I got this tattoo with my best friend Alicia, and it stands for sisterhood. And I'm also wearing the ring that has both of our birthstones on it. I wear it quite often. It actually fits on my ring finger. It reminds me of the importance of sisterhood love, and the importance of romantic love, but kind of how sisterhood love is just as important in my life. And then I'm also wearing hoops that my best friend Alicia gave to me. So I'm kind of doing an ode to womanhood with my jewelry today. I'm going to talk a little bit more about Kahindo right now. And then you can go check out my interview with Kahindo and learn all about where she's been since Project Runway, how that experience was for her. Honestly, she shares a lot about the Project Runway experience and kind of her relationship with Project Runway from the start when she first got on the show to afterwards, when she kind of looked back and she was done with Project Runway for a while, but since then has kind of thought about her relationship with the show and what it's done for her and how she's now rebranded and developed a healthier relationship towards it. As I already mentioned, Kahindo is created by women for women, but that is not all that Kahindo does. She has a mission to have a social impact by empowering women out of poverty who she is giving jobs to directly. You'll hear about this a little bit more in our interview, but she really finds that it's important to be on the ground where her collection is made. That's one of actually her business struggles. She wants to oversee every single part of production, make sure that it's done ethically, make sure that the women who are producing her clothing are treated fairly, that they are accepting the right wages, and, you know, that they are healthy and safe. And sometimes that can be difficult when you don't live in the place where your clothing is being made, right? So we get into that. We talk about that a little bit. I want you to go and take a listen to the interview, and then I'll talk a little bit more about Kahindo as a brand and why she has made the list of women empowering women designers afterwards. So go take a listen.
The brand is my name, Kahindo, and I'm originally from Congo and grew up all over Africa. And when I first moved to the States, I had like a suitcase full of traditional African attire, and I wore it to like, I think my economics class, and people were like, "Oh my God, why are you so dressed up?" And I'm like, "This is normal." But I quickly realized that, I needed to create something that was fashionable, was African, but was modern. And so my classmates, regardless of ethnicity, could wear it and feel cool and appreciate it. So that was kind of the first ideas. And I didn't, really pursue fashion until later on. But I think one other thing that kind of made me really say I want to start my own brand is after a few years of living in the States, I would go back home, get pieces made and wear them in Chicago where I lived at the time. And my friends, young women who were just starting out in the work field loved the pieces. So they were like, I want one. And I was like, okay, I think this could be a good business idea.
Totally. That's how you know you have a good business model, right? When like everyone's asking you about it. Do you remember from that time, maybe it was like a specific print or a specific piece that you wore that got a lot of compliments that kind of still resonates with you or with the brand?
Yeah, so I designed this one dress, and the prints, I used to source the prints from actually it's a Dutch company. People don't know, like a lot of African prints are made in the Netherlands. It's called Vlisco. So I used to source a lot of their prints and fabrics, and it was like, it had all the colors, and it was a lot of geometric prints and patterns. So that's what I remember. And I think I made a dress that I forget how I came across like the style, but I must have made it like in school. So it was really fresh, and it was like a bubble skirt. It had these cutout sleeves, and that actually became one of the most popular styles. And then I named it FLOTUS after Michelle Obama, and I actually sent her the dress.
Oh, wow. Did she wear it?
She didn't, but I got a thank you note from the White House, which I still love and keep. It's an amazing keepsake. Because I was like, and people always ask me, like, how did you send it? I was like, everyone knows the address of the White House.
Yeah.
So that was kind of a cool story as well. But that was a dress that, so many women have, and they still wear it today. And it's at least 15 years old, but it's still relevant, and it's still, it's like a classic with a statement. So that's what I kind of like doing. Take things that are more classic so you can wear it, and it's not trendy. So you can wear it over years and seasons, and it's seasonless.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think that's something else that really attracts me to your clothing is that with bold prints like this, you can really make them as casual or as fancy as you want them to be. And like, of course, the silhouette helps, right? Like amplify that. But I think that's what's so special and unique about the pieces. So I'm sure Michelle Obama thought the exact same thing when she received that. That is like incredible. I love her so much. So I love that for you. Now, talk to me about Project Runway. How soon after all of this or after coming to the States did Project Runway happen for you, and how did it happen for you?
Yeah, so Project Runway happened, oh my God, I think it's been 10 years now. So I'd started my first brand. I was living in Chicago and I had applied 3 times.
Oh,
And
wow.
the third time, yeah, and the second time was funny because I couldn't attend like the auditions in Chicago and New York. So I flew to LA
Okay.
to do the auditions. And two of my like childhood friends live in LA, so they were my models. So I was like, I think I got it, but I didn't get it. And
Oh,
then the next time, the third time I applied is when I got it. And I was in shock because once they tell you that you've been selected, it's like things move so quickly.
yeah.
You have to like sign NDAs, you have to get any family members or friends who want to be involved in your storytelling also sign NDAs.
Uh-huh.
And then you're like flown out to New York and like for, I think it was 4 weeks or something, you're cut off from the world. You're just like, they take all your personal belongings and you're in, taping mode.
Mm-hmm.
So they tape everything. So it was, I think the whole time I was just in shock. I was
Yeah.
like, I can't believe I'm here. I can't, like I was just like, and I should have snapped out of it quicker and faster, but it was something that I always wanted to do. And I really thought, everyone does think like going in that you're going to be like, you're going to win, right?
Right.
Otherwise you wouldn't try out for this thing, right?
Right.
So, but it really, I mean, and of course, so I did it. I got eliminated second. I was devastated. I was like, oh my God, the industry's going to think I'm a loser, like I'm horrible. I'm not a
Yeah.
good designer. And I felt that for a long time, but actually for a very long time afterwards. And when I
Mm.
start telling people like I got in, like even my story to get on is one of persistence and
Yeah.
perseverance and, not letting no, be the answer, just kind of keep on trying and pushing through. So I'm glad I did it. I met Tim Gunn and Heidi Klum and Nina Garcia. So it wasn't, I was about to say great experience. It was an interesting experience.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, because, it's a reality show, right? It's a television reality show.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I was naive thinking that it was all about talent.
Yeah.
And it's about drama and good TV. And I quickly realized that. And actually, even when people watch the episode I was eliminated, they quickly see that, right?
Yeah.
Because it's kind of, it was a plot and things happened and then, and then I got eliminated, but I shouldn't really have been. But then it is what it is.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that was kind of the motivation I needed to be like, okay, they think I wasn't good enough, but I'm going to show them. So I moved to New York to really take my brand to the next level. And then, of course, that's when I rebranded from Hoboken to Kahindo.
Yes. Well, I think, first of all, it speaks to your persistence that you showed up I'm sure they saw that you showed up 3 times. My dad actually interviewed for Survivor and he went to LA and did the auditions twice, maybe called a third time, didn't end up getting on the show, but said that it was really, really intense with signing the NDAs. He couldn't tell us where he was. Do you have any memories or maybe, what was the audition process like? Did it change from year to year as you tried out, or was it always the same thing?
It slightly changed. So I remember the second one, they were two designers from maybe 5 years ago who were the ones who were actually doing the auditions. And I was surprised at that. And I think one of them, I forget his name, the really popular one, he was there.
Okay.
The one who has a store and a brand, it'll come to me. But he was.
We'll figure it out.
Yeah,
I'll look it up. Yeah.
Exactly. So he was there, and I was so surprised that he would be there. But apart from that, it was, you had to send a video in.
Okay.
Of course, the long application, the video, and then you also had to do a psych evaluation with a shrink, a psychologist,
Mm-hmm.
and I was like, what do you need that for?
Right.
But I now know because they wanted to know everything about you. So
Mm-hmm.
they could not manipulate, but get you to react in a certain way. So it's real. Everything that happens is real,
Yeah.
right? Because it's not like made up. However, how they get you to react in certain ways, they push those buttons because they know everything about you.
Yeah.
So
there's always a plot in those reality shows. And I think it speaks to your strength that you were able to get through it and take away from it what you did, which was that I can show them. And then you went ahead and did it. I mean, would you ever go back for an all-star season like after that? Or are you kind of like, that was an experience?
Yeah, I think like if you asked me, even 5 years ago, I would have been like, never.
Yeah.
But now I know what it is, right? I know what I need to do to get to where I need to get to, right? So I can bring that out of me, that dramatic thing that they were looking for. And honestly, that's kind of the reason I think I got eliminated. I wasn't being as dramatic and I wasn't good for TV. I'm just this chill.
You're being real.
Right?
Yeah.
Exactly. So I wouldn't say never.
Yeah.
Never say never. So I wouldn't say never. So I think I'm open to it now. I'm more mature. I know who I am as a woman and as a designer. So, and I've been able to build a brand, a growing brand. So yeah, I would say, sure, why not?
Yeah. Now let's talk about that because you did rebrand. Now, did your experience on Project Runway influence the rebrand at all? When did you have I need to rebrand? When did that come to light? And like, what steps did you take to do that? Because that's a hard thing to do.
It is. And I think it was a number of things that led to the rebrand. One was, I got eliminated and I was like, okay, I'm going to try and go at this. And I remember they had, typecast me as the African designer or the African woman. And I was like, okay, if that's who you're going, I am African. I've lived in the US for nearly 30 years. And so that kind of stayed in my mind. The point that, we were in New York shooting, and I think that really inspired me, right? I was like, I can live in the city and do this, right? And because I think I had started getting a little complacent in Chicago, like all my friends and family were there, and I just wasn't getting motivated and inspired. And, New York, it's make or break, right? And it's hustle city. And if you could make it there, you can make it anywhere, like Jay-Z said. Right. But also because I was using like Vlisco fabrics, another designer used the same print and pattern. And there was confusion. People were like, is this you? And I'm like, no, that's not me. So I was like, okay, if I'm going to rebrand, it will be several things, right? I'm going to make it more personal. And because I'm going to make it more personal, I'm going to start designing my own prints and patterns. But I wanted to take it a step further. And maybe it was that African thing. I was like, you know what? Let me make it in Africa, right? Let me create a brand that is more about just fashion, right? Because clothes, fashion, fashion comes and goes, but I wanted it to mean more than that. And I'd lived in several different African countries growing up, and I knew how lucky I was to have the opportunities to come to the US for college. So I wanted to be able to give back in that sense. And I also wanted to kind of showcase the beauty and the positivity of the African continent. Because when I first moved here, there's so many crazy stories. People would be like, so how did you get here? I was like, on a plane. Like, what else do you think? Don't just ask me crazy stories like that. Like, do you live in a hut? I'm like, no, we live in a house, So I wanted to showcase that Africa is more than what CNN showcases, the poverty. That does exist, but there's also so much beauty and diversity and hope and, it's just full of so much different cultures and countries. And I think I was a great person to depict that because I've
Yeah.
lived in 5 different African countries. And also, like I said, I wanted it to mean more than just creating fashion. I wanted to create jobs for women. I wanted it to, to like employ local artisans in different countries and to utilize their like artisanal techniques,
Mhm.
all of that. So it was a bunch of things that kind of led me to that. And I feel once I did that, my business changed, I think maybe because of that, it became a little bit more successful than it was before.
Yeah, and I think it's impressive too. And I think back in 2017, around that time when you came up with this idea, like not as many brands were doing it, still not enough
Yeah.
brands are doing it. But I know that like there are challenges that come with it, right? Like you have a sustainable business model, ethical fashion is so important to you. And you also are creating job opportunities in Africa. So what challenges do come with that? Is there anything that's consistent that you think of automatically when you think of like a business challenge?
Yes. I think one of the biggest challenges that I'm working on is not being on the ground. So I'm currently in Cape Town in South Africa. So I need to be on the ground more
Mhm.
because, the quality of my contemporary brand for a $300 dress, it needs to be perfect. And I'm all about quality. Like I said, that dress, that Flotus dress, people still wear it till today.
Yeah.
It looks the same. Like the stitching, everything. So the quality needs to be there. That means I need to be here more
Absolutely.
to oversee that, right? Because I'm very involved. I don't really have a big team. People might think have a big, actually, the team of me. And I work closely with like the artisans and the factories, the small factories. So being more on the ground is imperative, and then overseeing that quality and because I have had some quality issues, like sizing issues, things like that.
Mhm.
So that has just been a challenge because I have to work on US standards and translate those standards and teach and educate those standards to the artisans I work with on the continent. So that has been a challenge. And just, my first degree was international business and economics. And thank God for that, because I
Yeah.
didn't know then that I would be doing this.
Mhm.
But just, shipping, imports, duties, all of those things has been a challenge for like a solopreneur such as I. But every day I'm learning, everything about it. And I think shipping has been one of the biggest costs and challenges because I'm having to ship the paper patterns, right? So the sizing is correct. So just shipping that back and forth has been challenging. And then of course the time difference,
Yeah.
I'm always like on my phone on WhatsApp, like every single day, every single time I'm just like communicating with its different teams and also coordinating, like because initially I was only making pieces in like Congo, and then I started making things in Nigeria, and so trying to coordinate all those different countries. And yeah, so I'd say everything is a challenge.
Yeah.
But I think it is a challenge, but doing like the mission of my business is what keeps me going, right? Because I now it's more than just me, right? I'm affecting livelihoods, right? I'm like working with new artisans. I'm bringing their talents to a new market, which when I started, I remember I was working with a group of artisans in Congo, in my hometown, and I would send them pictures of the pieces like in the store or customers, and they were just like in awe that something that they touched and made
Yeah.
was now across the world and people loved it. And I mean, I'm getting goosebumps now just thinking of it. And I was like, that is what they need to see, right? They also need to see that that is their life. They're doing something that is impacting women across the seas and oceans in a different way, right?
Mm-hmm.
So my customers impact the women I work with by purchasing the product, but it's also vice versa. You know, they're showing them that there's so much hope and opportunity, and like their work matters, right? And it's impacting them in a different way as well.
Absolutely. That was going to be my next question, which was just like, kind of, have you seen a tangible difference, like firsthand, in these women who now you have given jobs to and their livelihood and how it's affected them? But that's a great answer. I'll let you answer it again. But I was going to say before just how, like, to me, I feel like all the things you were describing, like all of the difficulties, the back and forth, trying to produce garments in all different places, that is what makes a luxury brand. And I think a lot of people don't know that. Like, people think luxury brand and they think like, what's on the red carpet? What are celebrities wearing? But like, this is like the hard work that makes a luxury brand. So I think, so I think that like the people who you are working with, I think they probably see that when you show them like the people who are actually wearing their clothes on the ground and everything that they're making. Do you have any like stories or memories from someone that you did work with that just kind of told you what a difference you've made in their lives?
Absolutely. I remember in Congo, I was working, the owner of the little co-op had, I think, 2 or 3 daughters. And in Congo, like in many African countries, when they don't have the means, the girls are the ones who don't go to school, don't get jobs. And they wrote to me and they're like, thank you for your business, because even though we didn't go to school, we now have a job, right? And we can now support our families. I mean, a lot of these women are like single mothers, so they're able to support them. And they also see they see in me that what's possible, right?
Yeah.
If you are able to support your family, if you're able to send your girls to school, I'm one of them.
Yeah.
I came from there. So it makes it's very impactful for them to see me trying to succeed in a different country. And I was them.
Yeah.
Right. And it's just because my father was educated and he then educated me and my siblings, and we were able to get these opportunities. So they can see that if you work hard and you get an education, you can also achieve what I've been able to achieve.
Yeah. So walk us through your brand's design process when it comes to you creating these prints that they live on, they're iconic, maybe they inspire a future collection. And then, sending these prints and patterns back to be made, right? And then from the time that happens to production to your clothes being on someone's back, what is that process like in a nutshell? And how do you want the woman who is wearing your clothes to feel?
Yeah. So I'll start with that last question. I want, my clothes are beautiful, colorful, and I want women to feel empowered and to feel beautiful. And a lot of women, sometimes if they don't wear a lot of color, they don't understand the power of color and how it can like lift your mood. If you wear yellow, if you wear blue, it just like makes you feel great. If you wear red, it makes you feel powerful. So there's so much like psychology of color, right? And how that makes you feel. So that's why I always say I want to empower the woman who's wearing my pieces as well as the woman who's making my pieces, right? And I love to travel, and I feel that most of my print and designs and ideas come from that. And I'll give you a perfect example for my upcoming spring summer 25 collection. So last year I went to Ghana, and I've never been to Ghana. Ghana has such a rich culture, and they have these symbols called Adinkra symbols.
Okay.
And, like when I travel, I'm a true tourist. So I remember I went with my best girlfriends, 4 of them. So we went to a batik making class where we took the symbols, put them in hot wax, and made cloth out of it, right?
Wow.
And I was like, this is literally what I do.
Yeah.
So, of course, that resonated with me. I took lots of pictures and videos. And when I was thinking about my next collection, I was like, I'm going to design prints made from these symbols, but like put the Kahindo spin, make it modern. And, so my new collection is a lot of pinks and blues, and it has a bunch of those symbols in like different motifs.
Yeah.
And, one means like Sankofa symbol. I think it means it's from God. Another one is about strength and empowerment, so it has all of that in it. So that's how I usually start from the fabric and the prints, the patterns, and then I do trend research to see what colors are going to be in.
Okay.
But I always tend to pick the ones that are not too popular.
Yeah.
So like I said, my next collection is blues and pinks. And then the styles, I really, throughout the years, have let the customer tell me what they want, right? So like my easy jumpsuits, I do those every season. I do a lot of cutouts in the back, because I design for real women.
Mhm.
So if it's a cutout, you still need to be able to wear a bra.
Yeah.
So I'm always thinking about those kind of things. And I have styles every season. And people think they're like completely different, but it's the same silhouette. It's a classical silhouette. I like playing with like color blocking. In my new collection, there's like ombre from like the ocean, it had this ombre effect of different blues. So that's how and then after I design the print and the styles, I then have to make samples, right? So a sample of each style in the fabrication or in the print. So I get those made, and usually I either, like this time I did things a little bit different because I also printed on like mesh and lace. So I started working with a small factory in Turkey that even if it's not in Africa, it's still creating jobs, for women and stuff. So half of the collection is made in Turkey, and then half of the collection is made in Kenya by female artisans. And yeah, so they make the samples. Then we do a photo shoot in New York so we can showcase the pieces to retailers. And then they kind of dictate which styles will be made. They make their selection, and then we're currently in production for spring summer 25. Yeah.
That's amazing. The process is, obviously very intricate, but important. Yes. Every part of it is super important. And I love your process and like your thought process of, well, these are the styles I'm going to go with. I'm going to try this color instead of that color. It's all very cool to listen to, but you just touched on something else, which is then your clothes are in major retailers like Anthropologie, Shop Up, Rent the Runway. So for someone who doesn't know, what is it like to get your clothes into a major retailer like that? Is it super difficult? How long does it take?
Yeah, it is. It is so difficult. It's very difficult. And it's also very, like the industry is very fickle, right? Yeah. So like I mentioned, I had some sizing issues, and they're not these retailers. Once you work with them, it's a huge opportunity, but you cannot make a mistake, because if you do, they will drop you. So and I was dropped by a couple of them, which like totally affected my business. But there's several different ways of like approaching major retailers. I've had showrooms. So in New York, they're mostly in New York and in LA, and actually in every major fashion city. So Milan, Paris. So there's showrooms where wholesale agents have relationships with all of the major department stores, retailers, even smaller boutiques. And every season, I think it's after Fashion Week. Okay. And I'll come back to Fashion Week, but it's after Fashion Week, all the buyers come to New York, and they come from like all over the world. And then they have appointments with the showrooms, and you have your samples. So that's why you need to have your samples there.
Mm.
You have your lookbook, you have your line sheet, which shows the wholesale price, and then the MSRP, which is usually 2.2, 2.5. Wholesale. It shows like even the fabrication, and then your sizing as well. So I do extra small to double XL. So they come, look at the collection, take notes, and then a week or 2 weeks later, they make a decision on the assortment from all of the different brands that they've seen, and then they place a wholesale order. So that is kind of the way to get into the large stores, because it's these wholesale agents that have relationships
Right.
with all of the buyers. And there are ways to do it without an agent, but it's very difficult. And even working with a showroom is extremely expensive, because you're paying a monthly retainer to physically be in the showroom. And then they also get commission off of the sales that they do. So all of that people like just don't know. And then getting into a showroom is so difficult. So I've been, I think, in 2 or 3 showrooms, and now I'm working with a folklore showroom, and they work with underrepresented brands and designers. So I'm literally doing a showroom showcase in February. So I'm currently working on my samples.
Yeah.
And you also have to think you work like literally a year in advance in a way. So currently, I'm working on my fall winter 2025 collection, which will be showed in February, which will then deliver to the stores.
It's so confusing. It is confusing.
Exactly. So, people like, what? And even us, we get kind of confused.
Yeah.
Right? Because September was literally, 3 months ago, and we showed spring, summer. So this time it's very short, because September we showed, spring, summer. Then I'm also at the same time producing the select that the stores selected, and making sure the size range is correct, all of that. So it's like a lot of moving parts. I would say like the beginning of the year, first quarter is so intense, because you have to do production for spring, summer that starts shipping in end of February. And then you also have to work on your samples. That is also in February for market week. And then if you're doing fashion weeks, those samples will be on the runway. But that's why I kind of don't do fashion weeks, because that's so much. It's like an additional thing, and it's a lot.
Well, like a lot of brands don't do fashion week, and they're still very successful brands. Do you think that there's something that like made you determine that is the route to go for you? Do you think you'll ever do fashion week, or do you just feel like more comfortable with the system that you've set up for yourself at this point?
Yeah, I think it's because I'm a small team, and I can only handle so much. And I have done fashion weeks in the past. So when I actually even before I moved to New York, I was doing fashion weeks with Harlem's Fashion, where I did it 3 times.
Yeah.
And it just didn't give me the return on investment, and fashion weeks were really made for kind of the process I just explained, but now they're 2 separate processes, right?
Yeah.
So they were meant for buyers to see the pieces on the runway and for them to select. But it's become more editorial. By major heads of departments will go to fashion weeks, but it's also a lot of the editors are going to fashion weeks, and now a lot of influencers. Yeah. So it's so now in New York, they're like 2 weeks. One is fashion week, and then one is market week.
Right.
Right. So they're also on 2 different weeks. So it's very hard, because buyers can't come to both. So they need to be selective. Which one do they go to? So I would, sometimes I'm like, I kind of want to do a fashion week, but then it's extremely expensive.
Yeah.
Right. And it's also, I think it's not worth it if you don't get the right people at your fashion week. Right. Because if you do all this huge fashion week, no one comes, no one writes about it, you've just wasted so much money and time.
Right.
Right. So, Yeah, you have to be very strategic.
Like you said, it's about knowing how to measure your success and how you want to go about that. So for you, what other ways, maybe non-tangible ways, maybe not with sales, how do you measure Kahindo's success? And maybe what advice would you have to a brand that's new and starting on how they should measure their success?
Yeah, I think for me, I really want to dress as many women as possible, right? So, and this hasn't happened to me yet, but seeing a woman I don't know on the street wearing my piece, and my friends always see actually, like,
Yeah.
and they'll be like, "Oh my God, I saw this woman and I went up to her and I was like, did you take a picture?" They're like, "No." I'm like, "Oh." So they do see because my prints are very bold and
Yeah.
graphic and recognizable.
Uh-huh.
So a couple of friends have seen women in my pieces, and I'm just like, oh my God, I'm blown away.
Yeah.
So I just want to, like create a brand, a lasting brand that's recognizable and that women love and support and build a community. So that's kind of my focus this year, build a community of women who are like my brand ambassadors, without the name, and build like I really appreciate and look up to like Diane von Furstenberg, built an iconic, brand in DVF. And I've been able to meet her twice, and she's everything that you think she is, right?
Yeah.
And of course, Tory Burch. I'm a Tory Burch fellow, and she's also built a business that also supports women. So that's what I kind of want to build. Like in 20 years, people will know Kahindo, and it will be one of those top brands that stood the test of time. And because this business and industry is so difficult.
Yeah.
And so many brands, even last year, just shut their business, shut their doors. So I'm just like, I just have to keep going. And that's truly, in a way, how you measure success, right? You just can't give up. And the past 2 years have been extremely difficult on my business, losing some major, accounts. But I'm just like, I know this can be big and it can have a huge impact. And what keeps me going is knowing that, that girl back home in Congo who has a job, or that woman, in Kenya who has a job because of my business. And I'm still growing.
Yeah.
So I'm like, I only imagine the impact I can have if I can grow to like a multi-million-dollar business, right?
Absolutely.
Like I can change women's lives on the continent. And that's kind of what keeps me going.
I think that's such a great answer. And I think that's also inspiring to someone else who's building a brand too, because, you have to remember what your values are. Even if you do become that billion-dollar brand, you're not a good brand unless you like stick to your DNA, I think. Right?
Exactly. And which is hard to do as you scale, right? So, and that's why in a way I've grown slowly, very slowly, but also my focus has been on major retailers, but my focus is now, in building community, I need to be a bigger D2C brand.
Yeah.
So that's going to be my focus this year, just reaching the consumer directly, because I can tell my story, right? Through the retailer, they just see a beautiful piece of clothing, but they don't know what that means, right?
Yeah.
So I want to be able to do that better.
Yeah. Well, I mean, getting into that a little bit deeper, how do you see African heritage influencing global fashion? I mean, you are one of those brands that is hugely doing that. And the bigger you become, the more it's happening. But, maybe in the vein of like pop culture and celebrities wearing these clothes, how do you see that happening? And how do you see it like progressing in the future?
Yeah, I think there's so much opportunity because like you said, in pop culture, like African music has just blown up in like the past 5 years, right? I mean, there's a South African who just won a Grammy, Tyler. There's Afrobeat out of Nigeria and Ghana, so like, and even Congo, we have like the coolest music. And then I think it needs to be now with fashion, they need to be like all these celebrities wearing our pieces to make it more mainstream,
Mm-hmm.
right? So that is what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to make it that anyone can wear it. And that's why I call it wearable art because anyone can wear it. If you want something beautiful and unique and different, but still wearable, come to Kahindo, right?
Absolutely.
So there's so much opportunity to make it more mainstream, and the retailers, it's helping that they're picking my brand in Nordstrom's and in Bloomingdale's. So that's because to be mainstream, you also have to be accessible,
Yeah.
and I think that is the biggest challenge for a lot of designers, right? Like being accessible in like a global market. And I think I'm slowly getting there because Bloomingdale's Nordstrom, which happened last year, which has been huge for my business, even just in terms of name recognition.
Yeah.
But I also saw in another platform called Wolf and Badger.
Oh, I love
And
Wolf. Yeah.
they're global. So with that, women from everywhere, like Singapore, Thailand, Dubai, they're purchasing my pieces.
Yeah.
So those platforms are extremely important to make it accessible for the masses to consume.
Absolutely. And I have a final question, which is kind of a fun question because Dinner for Shoes, this podcast, we're all about like blending fashion and food. And I personally was inspired to create this podcast because of getting dressed up to go to dinner. So the question is, have you ever, designed around maybe a meal or a memorable experience around food? Or would you ever? Have you ever designed something maybe that you were like, I would wear this out to dinner with my girlfriends? Like, what is your take on the blending of fashion and food?
I love that. And I'm a huge foodie. And like I said, calamari, that's like, and grilled calamari, and people like grilled calamari.
Yeah.
And I'm like,
if it's good, if you get good, fresh, yes.
Exactly. And I'm here in Cape Town, and every time I see calamari on the menu, I'm like, sign me up.
Yeah.
And yes, I do see my pieces like coexisting with food, like even this Namibia jacket, trench coat that I'm wearing, it's bold, it's colorful, and you can just put this on top of an LBD and go for dinner with your girlfriend.
Mm-hmm.
So I do see that some of my pieces are for those elevated experiences, like enjoying a good glass of wine with your girlfriend or your significant other with some amazing food. But more and more, I think you've now put something in my mind because like, what if I design a print that has like calamari, but you won't really know it's calamari?
Yeah.
Maybe that's the next thing.
I love that. I love the subtle little references. So I will wait on that piece. Thank you for listening to my interview with Kahindo. I'm going to dive right into the other brands that are female founded that you might not know are doing so much for women behind the scenes. Let's start with Kahindo. Obviously, I know that you just heard a lot about how she's like creating sustainable jobs in Africa and, doing so much for women. But I'm going to just talk a little bit more. So she does do this by working with organizations that protect refugee women, providing them direct access to jobs. She also partners with sewing co-ops and artisans in Africa that utilize traditional textile techniques, I know, which we touched on in the interview, to create these incredible prints that I'm wearing today. And the brand as a whole has pledged to meet the UN Sustainable Development Goals, which touch on climate action and access to quality education as well for women. So I love that. Now, another brand that you may already know, I think you probably do know, is Tory Burch. If you didn't know about the Tory Burch Foundation that has been established, that has its own website that you can read all about, Tory Burch is Chief Creative Officer and the Executive Chairman of the company. And you may know that she launched a long time ago in 2004. And then in 2015, she developed Tory Sport, which I think I wear some of the activewear. I think it's incredible. I think it feels so good. I think it is so cool and sexy and fun. And she actually has, if you go on her website, an entire collection called the Foundation Collection, where 100% of net proceeds benefit the brand's work to empower women, which she does through the Tory Burch Foundation. And like I said, there is a website for it, but basically what this foundation does is provide women founders and entrepreneurs, whether they're designers or they are doing something else, access to capital. It helps sponsor their brands. It provides a community and it harbors growth. So it is a really amazing foundation. And I really love this quote that is also shared on her website that says, "When I started my company, supporting women wasn't part of my business plan. It was my business plan. I knew that business could be a powerful vehicle for change. Through the Tory Burch Foundation, we have supported thousands of women entrepreneurs with grants, low interest loans, education, and community." So she should be really proud. Mara Hoffman is another one who actually has different prints than Kahindo, but also very inspiring and beautiful, lots of like brushstroke work, very bohemian. I love Mara Hoffman, and I also appreciate how size inclusive the brand is. But they partner with Retraced, which tracks the production method of their products and ensures minimizing energy and waste. Incredible. They prioritize treatment of workers, and many factories that they invest in where their clothing is made are women run and women owned. They regularly visit factories to ensure, just like Kahindo was talking about, that the workplace is safe and that it is fruitful and everyone is happy there. They also work with artisan groups made up of women and small producers that are based in developing countries and lack direct access to global markets like ours. By introducing their products into this market, these smaller business products, they are bettering the economic opportunities for people and women in these countries. One such region is India, which is actually where their cotton is grown. Their organic cotton is grown. So that's one region that they work very closely with at Mara Hoffman. Rebecca Minkoff, who you may know for like her edgy, really cool rocker vibe accessories. She started when she was just 18, which is incredible to me. I've actually met her a couple of times, and she's a very kind woman. And she launched her first tee in 2001, but then in 2005, she launched the Morning After bag, which was kind of when things really started to pick up for her. In 2018, she'd established the Female Founder Collective, which is a network of businesses led by women that invest in women's financial power across the socioeconomic space by enabling these businesses, very similar to what Tory Burch is doing with the Tory Burch Foundation. She also has the Superwoman podcast. If you haven't listened, it is a great podcast where she kind of talks about women from all walks of life in all areas, about kind of how they got their start, but then she also invites them to share their real vulnerable experiences and just have an honest conversation, which I love. And of course, their conversations touch on these women's career paths, how they got to where they are, and it's just really wonderful. The Female Founder Collective also has an Instagram, and they have a little logo, so they invite brands that they work with to use that logo to show that their brands are female founded, and just celebrate that. Brother Vellies is another brand that we talked about. We actually talked about them quite recently. We talked about Aurora James, who has just done incredible things for the Black community and for women. And 1% of each Brother Vellies purchase is donated to a charity or organization of the shopper's choice, which I really appreciate. But one is Equality Now, which goes to women's rights, which is huge. And so I think like if I was checking out on Brother Vellies, I would probably choose that charity. Brother Vellies is also creating jobs for women artisans across the world, women in South Africa, Kenya, Mexico, Morocco, Ethiopia, I'm going to run out of fingers, Italy, Haiti, and at home in New York City are practicing sustainable methods. They are ensuring job health there for women to create the shoes and accessories that have become so well known of Brother Vellies. And they also have some really unique production methods. They use vegetable tan leathers, soling from recycled tires, hand-carved wood, floral dyed feathers, along with a collection collection of other byproduct materials that are sourced from farmers across the globe and helping these farmers establish their businesses and better their economic health. And then Hope for Flowers. I'm sure you've heard of Tracy Reese. Tracy Reese, similar to Kahindo, did rebrand quite recently. It happened in 2019. She used to have a namesake label called Tracy Reese, always had really beautiful, actually, dresses. I feel like I just thought of her wonderfully printed and colorful dresses when I thought of Tracy Reese, and she has continued that aesthetic in Hope for Flowers, which I think is a beautiful name for a brand. And the brand it took a turn where it's specializing in sustainability in order to benefit the health of its people and the planet and equity. And the brand also sources responsibly. They operate by producing in small batches, which is something that I think we've talked about before that I really appreciate in a sustainable brand. Don't overproduce. Produce for the person who's actually checking out and purchasing your clothing. I don't care how long it takes for me to get what I want. I prefer that it is made in that way so that there's not a surplus of waste. And that's something that they specialize in. They also create their digital prints using less ink. So they're very invested in that process. So they are yielding fewer harmful chemicals and throwing that out into the environment, right? And Tracy is also working to build an artisan studio in Detroit, creating economic opportunities for women in underserved communities. So these designers are quite literally making it their business to invest in women, to better the health of women everywhere. And Kahindo is the one who kind of inspired me to have that conversation today. So now, as an ode to her, I am going to try her favorite food, which is grilled calamari, which is hard to find in Hoboken. And I hate that because I love grilled calamari. So I'm going to go get it. I'll be right back. We are back. We women are back. You're a woman. Did you know that you're a woman? You're a beautiful woman. And it's actually International Women's Day when we're recording this episode, which is so appropriate. Yay. Okay, come here. Okay, so that's my woman. And we are eating a grilled calamari salad. Now, the last time I had grilled calamari on the episode, we got grilled calamari from Honshu. And this time we're trying the grilled calamari from Benny Tudino. Babe, how do you pronounce Benny Tudino's? Babe, it's International Women's Day. What the hell? Benny Tudino's is in Hoboken, and they have the biggest pizza slice, I think. But so I didn't know like what dressing to get with my grilled calamari salad. I'm telling you, Honshu and Benny's is the only place, I'm just going to call it Benny's. I think we established that, is the only place where you can get grilled calamari in all of Hoboken and Jersey City. So I decided to go with Italian dressing. I'm like, this is like not going to be the type of grilled calamari that Kahindo likes, but it is. The one at Honshu is actually very, very good, I have to say. Okay, so let's try this grilled calamari salad. I do really love grilled calamari. I already said that like 55 times, but I love it in all forms. And I like fried calamari, but I actually do agree with Kahindo that I like grilled calamari better. I think I was right to get it with the Italian dressing because the Italian dressing gives it a little bit more of a kick. When you have kind of more of like a bland grilled calamari, maybe there's no sauce on it, which is the situation here. You need a little sauce, you know? I love this. I'm also recording this at 10 a.m. I just want to be honest with everybody. Actually, it's 11:19. That just goes to show you. That's when I like started realizing that I was going to record at like 10. We would like to say that we love you and we're women and you're women and we love women. And we do have a whole episode on women-owned. She's the only one that stays with me. We have a whole episode on women-owned businesses and fashion brands that I love, where we actually had 3 folks on that I guest interviewed until Megan was like, okay, Sarah, 3 interviews in one episode is way too much. We can't do that anymore. But we do have that episode if you would like to go check it out on our channel. It was last year or 2 years ago. I don't even know. It had to have been last year. We've only been around for over a year. I love you and I love your belly. We love women. We love women. Love you. Bye.